Dirt jumping and slopestyle is one of the most aesthetically pleasing types of mountain biking to watch. It's exciting and there's so much going on in the airtime whilst people are doing tricks on massive jumps, but it can also be quite confusing, and I do wonder how many people actually know and understand what is happening when the guys are performing some of the biggest tricks that there are. So whilst I'm injured and recovering from my ruptured spleen, I'm going to take the time today to explain 10 of my favourite tricks to you. The first trick that we're going to be taking a look at is most likely one of the first tricks that you as a dirt jump rider will learn, and that is the tuck no-hander. Now, not only does this trick feel amazing, flying through the air with your hands off the handlebars, but it's also pretty safe and easy to learn. You don't need that much airtime. And as you progress your tricks and learn new moves, it's really easy to throw in as an added variation. For example, backflip no-hander, front flip no-hander, 360 no-hander. It all links together and it all stems from learning the tuck no-hander. If you can find yourself a perfect mulch jump slash fly out similar to the one I'm stood on right now, it's the perfect place to learn the tuck no-hander. You can build up slowly, take your time, and before you know it, then bars will be in your laps. You'll have them wings spread and you will have learnt the tuck no-hander. Let's look at the next trick. Trick number 2, the no-foot can. And this is one of my favourite moves because, well, there's 2 ways you can do it. First of all, the trail style for jumps similar to the ones behind me, where you extend 2 feet together. It looks very clean, very organised and very stylish. Then there's the second way of doing it, which is the Indian air. And this originates from freestyle motocross. You lay it all on the line, you push the bike out, big kick to the side, maximum extension. I can feel my back click, my lower back, when I know I've done a good one. And this is not only a fun trick to perform, but it's definitely a crowd pleaser. Once again, this is quite a simple, easy trick for you to learn with relatively low consequences at the early stages, but it's also an important one to learn because it's the base for eventually moving on to bigger tricks like hill clickers, Supermans, and even Superman seat grabs. We're turning the dial up, we're going to increase the difficulty instantly, and we're going to look at the 360, which is, I would say, a stock trick, but it is one that's so important to learn because it's the base of a lot of your more advanced moves like the 360 tail whip, the 360 bar spin. You can't do that if you can't 360. Why do I love the 360? Well, you're traveling in the air, backwards, spinning around. It feels amazing. It never gets old. You can't go to a session and not enjoy doing a 360. The things that I find difficult about a 360 is if it's a steep ramp, it's hard not to drag your back wheel, which sometimes can affect the rotation. And when you start doing it on really big jumps, it's really difficult to do a nice slow spin because where the takeoff is steep, you're spinning, you're going against the ramp, which is really difficult. If you want to turn the dial up even more, once you have the 360 dialed, you can start doing opposite 360s, which is like trying to write with your left hand. It's so awkward, it's so difficult, but it's another variation. And when you watch slopestyle nowadays, everyone is doing everything opposite, and the 360 is a good place to start with your oppo bangers. Next up, the tail whip. This is one of my all-time favorites. As a kid, I really wanted to learn this trick, and it took me about 6 months of persisting with it and constantly trying. Bruised heels, bruised ankles, bruised shins, knees, loads of damage, but it was worth it because nowadays it is one of my favourite tricks. I do this trick all over the place. The tail whip's all about timing, and what I was saying about the transition of the ramp on the 360 is the same for the tail whip, because if you take off too early, it's very easy to drag your wheel up the lip on a steep ramp, and what that causes you to do is it causes the bike to stop and for you to go into a nosedive, or the bike to land halfway backwards, which we call a shopping trolley, because you're running, it looks like you're pushing a trolley. That's not good. You don't want to do that. Once you're comfortable with this, once again, you can add variations. You can do the trick with tail whip to bar spin to tail whip, 360 tail whip. There's loads of options, double tail whip. And if you want to really go to that top level, you can do it opposite and do an opposite tail whip, which is one of the only opposite tricks I actually personally really struggle with and don't do very often. Let's move on to the next move. Trick number 5, and for the midpoint of this video I've picked a special one, and that is the backflip. This is the trick that everyone wants to learn. And if people don't know anything about biking, they always ask, can you do a somersault? Believe it or not, the backflip is one of the easiest tricks, and I'll tell you why. What I was just saying about the ramp being steep, on a 360 you're going against the transition. Well, with a backflip, you're going with the transition. So that makes the rotation pretty simple because you're already, as you come out of a steep ramp, sort of halfway there. What makes the backflip difficult is the fact that you're going upside down with a bicycle in between your legs. So rather than being hard, technically, it's just scary. And if you can get your head around the fear factor, then you'll dial the backflip easily. Personally, I would recommend for the backflip to learn it into a foam pit or onto an airbag, because most likely in your first attempts you will land on your head. It's easier on a hardtail. The suspension changes the dynamic of how you pull and how the flip works. When you then come to doing it on a jump, just make sure you've done loads on the airbag or the foam pit, really comfortable with the rotation, then pick a nice safe jump where you perhaps don't have to worry about clearing a gap, because that adds another element to it. Make sure you're going fast, stay committed, and just send the flip. And once you've done it, you'll love it, you'll get a buzz. Keep doing it and dial it in. The next trick we're going to be looking at is the bar spin. Now, you might be thinking after backflips and tail whips that we're toning it down a level, but in actual fact, it took me longer to learn a bar spin than it did to learn tail whips and backflips. And the reason for that is because I just couldn't get my head around throwing the handlebars. It was really scary. I thought about them getting stuck the other way and loads of things come into my mind, but I'm gonna do my best now to break it down for you. The bar spin is such a good trick to learn because you can do it literally anywhere. You can do it in bar spins, down stair sets. It's a nice quick variation to throw in, and once you get good at it, double bars, oppo bars, the list is endless, and it is really fun to do. It's very pleasing, which is why I think a lot of people learn it. We have 4 tricks left and it's time to step things up a notch. So I'm going to explain the 720. This is a trick which I actually needed explaining to me not long ago. Throughout my career, this has been something that I've had dialed, then I've not had it dialed. Basically, it's 2 360s in the air, but the reason it's so difficult is because if you don't get the balance right out of the lip, then the trick will either, you'll land on your side, you'll land on your back wheel and loop out. It's so difficult to nail it and get it precise. I've spent hours in a foam pit figuring out body position, and what I figured out eventually is I actually put my head down, I look at my rear hub just as I'm coming into the second spin, and I can feel like my hip, not click, but like do a weird thing, and that's when I know I'm locked into a right position. But you might have that dialed on one type of ramp, you go to a different ramp which is slightly steeper or mellower, and the whole dynamics change again. So it's not an easy one to dial in. It's taken me lots of time, but when I get it right, it's definitely worth it. The Backflip Superman is one of my favourite tricks. It's a big jump trick. The more airtime you have, the more you can hang off the bike, extend, and fly through the air upside down with your bike miles away from you. With a backflip, you pull out the ramp and you want to make sure you feel the rotation. You're looking for the landing and you can feel the flip spinning. With the Backflip Superman, you delay everything. As you come out the ramp, you lay flat, push the bike away to try and extend it as much as you can, and you're not even looking backwards. I'm looking forwards at the pedals, which feels weird because it feels like you've half committed to a flip. However, the way that you then get back on the bike all of a sudden speeds the rotation up. It does need quite a big jump to make it work and to look good, which is why I don't really do it very often, but it's definitely one that scores high with the judges, looks good, and just feels, it's probably my favourite feeling trick. I think I'd go as far to say that. Trick number 9 is quite a controversial one for me. We're going to be taking a look at the front flip. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that recently that's how I ruptured my spleen. It's not the first time I've crashed front flips. It took me a long time to learn. It's a really difficult, awkward trick, mainly because you're going completely against the way the ramp wants to send you. If you're going off a steep ramp to try and go forward, you've got to go so far, whereas like I was saying with the back flip, it's almost half a rotation, making it a lot easier. With the front flip, what many people probably don't understand is it's all actually in the rear brake. When you think back to doing a manual, if you pull the brake, it slams the front down. If you just tuck up in a ball and commit to doing it out of a ramp, that is how you front flip. But what you actually have to do is on the lip, pull back a tiny bit first. So you pull back like the start of a backflip, lock the brake, tuck up. If your head is in front of the stem, it makes you rotate slower. So put your head behind the stem, you're in a smaller ball, you rotate faster. And it's also quite a blind trick, which makes it very difficult to spot your landing. Once you've got it dialed, one of my favorite variations is the front flip no-hander. It feels amazing, it feels dangerous, and it feels daring. For trick number 10, we've saved the best till last. That is the backflip tail whip. When I was growing up, this was the biggest trick in the game, and I did not understand it. I couldn't figure out how you could do either of those tricks individually, let alone combine them. So when I started learning tricks, naturally that's what I went for, and in my head that's always been the biggest trick. In a contest it's my go-to trick on a big jump, it scores well with the judges and it feels amazing to do. Let me try and break it down a little bit for you. With a backflip tail whip, as you approach the jump you need to relax. It's all about relaxing and focusing on the tail whip. So I pull a tiny bit for the backflip, but it feels like I'm more just doing a tail whip but sort of leaning back a little bit. As I feel my feet then connect to the pedals, that is when I look over my shoulder or look backwards to continue the rotation of the flip. For me, the backflip tail whip will always be one of the higher tricks, and it's always going to be one of my favourites. There we have it. They are my 10 favourite tricks explained to you, giving you a bit of an insight of what you see us doing, how it feels, and the things we look out for when we're doing these tricks on kicker ramps, perfect dirt jump setups, or even when you're watching contests. So I hope that in some way you found this video beneficial. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, leave some comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video.